Hey, sports fans, Coach Nick here, and I am honored to bring on the governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, to the show to discuss Sixers and all sorts of other basketball stuff. So, Governor, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Coach. I'm excited, man. I'm a big fan of yours, and I'm a hoops guy, so I'm excited to talk some hoops. So let's get to it.
Absolutely. Well, I've seen your jump shot, and as a jump shot coach, I'm just kind of curious. You seem to have had, somebody work with you on that one. What level did you play at? And how far did you get when you were playing?
Yeah, it's so funny. I played in high school, was pretty good, and went to college. Tried to be a walk on at a D3 school. Kind of made it all the way through until that first game, and I got cut from the team. It was a tough day for me, though. I must tell you the postscript on this, about what would it be, almost 30 years later. I had the opportunity to spend some time with Jay Wright, the great coach of Villanova.
Mm-hmm.
And Jay was the assistant coach at the school I went to, the University of Rochester. He left just before I got there. And Jay, unbeknownst to me, reached out to the coach that cut me and said, "Hey, do you know you cut the governor when, way back when?" And I felt better knowing that the coach at the time said I cut him because we had so much talent on the squad. The team ended up going to the Final Four, Division III Final Four. And he goes, in a normal year, I would have kept him on the team. So I'm going to take that with me forever, that in a normal year, I might have been able to make the team. But I still play with my kids, and my kids joke I'm deadly from about 15 feet, except nowadays the kids are all shooting from behind the three-point line, and my accuracy goes way, way down once I hit that three-point line.
Well, we're the same age, so we learn how to shoot at the same time. And
Yeah.
let's just say, if I get on the court with you at some point in the future, I think I can unlock some more range for you. I think it's
I'd love that.
techniques. Yeah.
I've noticed. So, like, my kids make fun of me when I shoot. I'm releasing the ball above my head, and part of that is how I was taught. Part of it is I'm short. I'm only like 5'9". My kids are shooting the ball from their chest, almost like a chest pass. So their range is so much further. And we've got 4 kids. One of my kids is like deadly accurate too, which is like incredible. But they're releasing the ball from down here, which is giving them way more lift on their jump shot, I've noticed. So I don't know how you're teaching it, Coach, but
Yeah.
I've noticed
it's a one motion shot. Like when we learned it, we did learn a 2 motion shot. Ball gets over your head, and then you kind of push it from there. But when you have the energy transfer, like your kids are shooting, yes, you're getting out to 25 feet with effortless release. And it's kind of like what we learned from Steph Curry, and when we finally got HD footage, we can go frame by frame and realize that all the things that they taught us way back in the day, and this might even sound familiar to your job, we're starting to realize a lot of the things that were accepted as fact and as the best methods are probably not that way, and we need to evolve.
Totally.
Paint the
I will
picture.
say I've had the privilege of being able to coach my kids up to a point in their local like travel league, and man, I used to freak out when they'd be coming down on a fast break and pull up from 3, because when you and I grew up, you would come down, stop at the foul line, bounce pass to someone for an easy layup. And now they don't do that. So I'd be like, no. And then they'd make the 3. And I'd be like, great shot.
Yeah.
Awesome job. So it's just totally different game now.
Absolutely. I mean, I was a terrific 3-point shooter, but you know what? I took one off the dribble in transition in my senior year. And can you imagine what happened to me after that, before the shot even hit the rim? I was sitting next to the coach, really. It was
exactly.
Almost
go sit down.
Now, let me paint the picture a little bit. What was your game? Who were you most like? Give us an NBA player that you kind of played the most like.
I mean, I was obviously nowhere near as good as him, but like a John Stockton type, or for me, a Sixer that I always tried to emulate was Mo Cheeks. I mean, I just thought he was an outstanding point guard. Cheeks knew how to find his teammates exactly where they wanted the ball. If he needed to score a basket, he could get down the lane and make a nice layup, but you would have games where Cheeks might score 6 or 8 points, but have 9 or 10 assists. And that's the kind of game I played in high school.
Okay. Mo Cheeks, another in the long line of Chicago guards coming out of my hometown. So great to hear. Now, I know that healthcare is a really important issue for you. So I'm wondering if there's some way you could pass some sort of Medicare bill that can directly help the Sixers. Is that possible?
Dude, it's awful what's going on there. I mean, I think, look, obviously, we've got some guys who are incredibly talented who have had terrible luck, right? Jared McCain, who was, I mean, hell, I think he was on pace maybe to be rookie of the year. Tyrese Maxey, who, had an extended absence. And those are guys who just want to play and play hard every single night. And then you've got Joel and Paul George, who have been banged up. And I got to tell you, I think there are nights where I wonder if, the game was being played in the 90s and the early 2000s, if they would play. But, I mean, the game is different now. The slightest injury, guys are sitting out and they're taking the night off. And so I think on the one hand, the Sixers have dealt with some terrible luck with guys getting hurt. On the other hand, I'd love to see a little bit more of a desire for every player to be out on the floor at the same time. Now, it's easy for me to say. I'm not the one who has to put his body out there. I'm not the one battling the injuries. But man, oh man, you think back to the way Jordan got banged around in every game, Kobe got banged around, and these guys were battered and bruised, and they played the game. And by the way, played 40, 42 minutes a night. And you're just not seeing that anywhere in the NBA right now.
Yeah, it's an interesting mindset, and I get the science in terms of trying to protect their bodies, and it's an asset as well with a lot of money involved. I mean, when we played, like this finger will never straighten because
right.
I broke it, and then I just ignored it. Right?
I got this one that won't straighten either.
Yeah, and that was I'm not sure I would want my kids to have that mindset growing up, right? Like, what do you think about that in terms of how we grew up and how we were learned? Larry Bird had all manner of injury and was hobbled and probably is in pain now. Like, is that a smart mindset to have when you're out there playing?
No, and look, I think there's probably a healthy middle ground. But I think the NBA in general, just broadening it out, not just the Sixers, you got a lot of stars that just don't play every night, that aren't doing back-to-backs, that are taking too many nights off. And by the way, commanding a whole lot of money. So I get the fact that you've got to protect your body, but you're also getting paid to play. And so I think the NBA has to figure out how to get back into some balance there. Otherwise, they're going to lose fans and not be able to maintain the level of connectivity during an 82-game season. They may have to rethink whether they play 82 games or what they can do to, make getting into the playoffs a little bit more, either more difficult or have the season shorter so the playoffs occupy more time during the season. They got to figure something out because I think right now it is a challenge to keep the attention of fans.
Well, let's talk about that for a second because, as you're watching and you're familiar with X's and O's, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Are there actions? Is there something that you see on the court in an offense that just gets you out of your seat and makes you really excited when you see them do it, backdoor cut or anything like that?
Yeah, I love the fundamentals, right? Where, not to sound like an old school, Princeton offense guy, but I mean, there is nothing better than, to me, a really well executed pick and roll or an executed backdoor cut, that quick bounce pass for the easy two. I just think like that kind of basketball to me is exciting. Now, that is just simply not the way the game is largely played. Right now, basically what you got is 5 guys outside of the three-point line, spacing the floor, either for someone to drive and dish, or for the sort of one isolation player to be able to beat his player down. I think a lot about how MJ used to beat his player off the dribble, but then when he got in the lane, he had to deal with Patrick Ewing, or he had to deal with Hakeem Olajuwon. He had to deal with one of these big guys who he then had to get through. Nowadays in the game, you beat your player off the dribble, you got mostly a clean shot at the lane, either to take it all the way to the hoop or you get a little floater where you're largely uncontested. And it's just a really, really different game today. I know I sound like an old fart talking like this, but I just like those fundamentals. I like seeing, and I know the game's not played this way anymore, but the big man being able to do what Olajuwon did, what Joel is capable of doing. I love that. I think, the big man who's able to, sort of get the ball down low and pass and find somebody open like Jokic does, I think that's really exciting. It'd be interesting to see how Wemby is able to change the game for a big man. He's able to seemingly do it all, and that that's going to obviously change the game as we go forward here. It's both an exciting time, but I do kind of wish for a little bit of how the game used to be played too.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's why, like, I'm a triangle offense coach, and I really think that we could probably continue to merge the genius of like the 20s and the 30s. They really knew what they were doing back then with patterns, and then you merge that with the shooting and the dribbling. But I know I was looking at this a little bit in terms of.
By the way, Chicago won 6 titles with the triangle offense. Like, I mean, it does work, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, the Lakers won a bunch more. So yeah, it's a really they were really smart. They understood a rectangular field and how you can attack and move.
Yep.
And I was looking at the NBA and how it's structured, and I was kind of thinking, this is what's interesting to me is, a head coach in the NBA, it was probably a lot like a governor of the state in the United States, wouldn't you say?
Well, I mean, you got to figure out how to get the most out of your team. You got to lead. You got to make tough decisions, and you got to own it, whether it works or it doesn't. And so there's a lot you can find in leaders. Head basketball coach, obviously being a leader. The kind of work I do, business leaders and others, the buck really does stop with you, and you got to be willing to make tough decisions. You got to make the call when there's real pressure, and you got to own it.
Communication has to be probably motivation is another big part of this as well. I think. Do you use any of your basketball experience, do you feel like, as a governor?
I do. I mean, I view governing as a team sport. I talk about that all the time with my senior team, with my cabinet and others who go out and execute every day. Look, I'm the governor. I'm in charge. I get to make the final decision, but I don't view myself as being above everybody that I work with. I view us all as working together, sort of in a flat structure where everybody has a unique role to play. And if everybody plays that role well, then the team is going to win. And for me, the team delivers for the people of Pennsylvania, gets shit done for the people of Pennsylvania. Obviously, a head coach, their job is to win games. But if you're coaching a great team, and just look at the teams right now, right? Whether it's Cleveland or OKC, or I hate to admit it as a Sixers fan, but the Celtics, these guys from, those who sit on the bench and are largely just present in practice to the star player, everybody knows their role. They're all working in sync. The coaches work well together. There's a calmness about how they're executing every day. So I think a lot about that when I think about how to govern here in Pennsylvania and how to motivate my team and work with my team to execute to help the people of Pennsylvania.
Well, I got a couple questions left. As a coach, you get your schedule and the season starts, and you identify like the big game against the really hard opponent, and you start to prepare like from
Christmas
the very
Day
beginning.
game and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what would that be? What's the equivalent for you when you're looking at your agenda going forward on your schedule? What is that big game that you already are preparing for way ahead of time and ready to take on a challenge?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, there are kind of unique moments in the calendar where the governor is called upon to introduce something or speak out about something or what have you. For example, in February, I lay out in what is sort of like our State of the State address. I lay out my budget. Those are my priorities for the year. That's a big day for us to lay out that vision. And then we execute on it and ultimately, hopefully get a budget passed by the legislature sometime in late June, early July. And so you kind of know that there's a rhythm to the season, if you will, when it comes to the budget. What is really different about my job is we can look at a calendar and plan, but then every day there's an emergency. Every day there's a unique challenge. And how you deal with the daily issues that come up, but not let them distract you from the broader goals that you have to achieve, that is what's really different. Like, I didn't have on my calendar, hey, I-95 is going to collapse in Philadelphia and we're going to have to figure out a way to repair it. But we did that. And by the way, repaired it in just 12 days after the experts said it would take months. But as we were going through that process, we also still made sure to be executing on making sure kids got universal free breakfast at school, and making sure we funded our cops and firefighters to keep people safe, and so much more. So you really got to be able to kind of walk and chew gum at the same time, deal with the adversity of the moment, but stay focused on your broader goals.
Absolutely. Well, last question, really quickly. We talked about how an NBA head coach kind of parallels perhaps a governor. Do you want to be commissioner?
Look, I'm a big fan of Adam Silver's. I think he's doing a good job. I think he recognizes he's got to figure out how to make some changes in the NBA. That was really apparent after this weekend, and another All-Star weekend that kind of didn't. I don't know. Wasn't particularly exciting, I think, to the average fan. I think Adam Silver does a really great job. I think leading the NBA is a pretty cool thing. But man, I got a great gig, and I'm not going anywhere.
Okay, well, we'll file that answer in for later as we get closer to a few years from now. Governor, I'm honored to have you on the show. I can't thank you enough for being here and joining us and giving us some insights to basketball. It's really cool.
Well, Coach, I appreciate the chance to be with you. Big fan of your show, and just a big fan of those who love basketball. I think that the team game of basketball is so special. A lot of life lessons. We talked about some of that here. Great way to connect with family, with friends, with your community. I love it. And I wish I could still play at the level I used to, but I still try and get out there and play, and we love playing and enjoy talking about it even more. So thanks for having me on, Coach.
Awesome. And don't forget, sports fans, at B-Ball Breakdown, we're not a channel, we're a conversation. You in? Are you in, Governor?
I'm in.